Whether it's a big rock chasing Indiana Jones, or a spike trap along a hiking trail, or just Legos that have been scattered around your living room floor by your toddler, traps can add danger, intrigue, and challenge to your game, and they can really make your dungeons come to life. I've got some tips for you on how you can make better traps and make better use of them in your Dungeons & Dragons game. So like, subscribe, and let's get going with those tips. One of the keys to making traps effective is to make them believable. Make them fit into your game world. When your traps are believable, they'll feel more immersive and exciting. Here are some things to consider when creating believable traps. Think about the purpose of the trap and what kind of people or creatures would have set it. For example, is the trap meant to protect treasure, slow down intruders, or eliminate pests? Knowing the purpose of the trap will help you determine its design and its placement. Make sure the trap fits with the environment and the story of your game. If the trap is meant to protect a hidden temple, it should be in keeping with the architectural style of the temple and the culture that built it. If the trap is meant to eliminate pests, it should be appropriate for the type of pests that it's designed to deal with. No one sets up a poison dart trap to kill rats, and nobody sets up rat traps to slow down Indiana Jones. The traps in your world should make sense in terms of how they've been laid. For example, if a trap is meant to slow down intruders, it should be placed in a logical location where it's going to do that. Tripwire should be on the ground, for example, and not up on the ceiling. Unless, of course, they're trying to slow something down that actually does walk on the ceiling, in which case that's great foreshadowing. Similarly, if a trap is meant to be triggered by a specific action, make sure that action is clear and consistent. There's few things that are more frustrating for a player than a lack of logical consistency in the game world, and that goes for the traps that inhabit it as well. By making your traps believable, you'll make your game more immersive and exciting. Players will feel like they're in a real, living world, and they'll be more invested in overcoming the challenges that you present. Today's video is brought to you by my upcoming book, Libris Nocturnum. This is an anthology of D&D adventures where you immerse yourself in a world of fear as you journey through 13 bone-chilling adventures from level 0 to 12. Discover over 30 new and original horrific creatures that will hunt, haunt, and terrorize your players, each with their own unique abilities and lore. Every adventure is 5e compatible, so you can bring your existing characters right on over or make your own. Or if you don't have time for that, get started quickly with our pre-made level 0 characters that build on the Survivor template from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. You can take these simple nobodies from being zombie fodder to being saviors of the world. So, if you're ready to face your fears and journey to the heart of darkness, come join me on my journey to get Libris Nocturnum into the hands of thousands of game masters and players around the world. We're launching on March 15th, so sign up for launch notifications over on Kickstarter today using the link down below. That being said, let's take a look at our next trap tip. Traps are meant to be a challenge, but they shouldn't be impossible to overcome. The last thing that you want to do is create a trap that is so frustrating that people don't want to play in your game anymore. The key is to find the right balance between challenge and frustration. Here are some things to consider when creating traps that are challenging, but not overwhelming. Consider the experience level of your real-life players and the level of difficulty of the traps that you want to create. If your players are experienced with the game, you can create more challenging traps. But if they're new to the game, you should start with something simpler that's easier to understand and overcome. First-time players probably don't need to be dealing with complex traps during their first session. Give your players clues about how to overcome the traps. This can be through visual cues such as a pressure plate or a tripwire, or it can be through more subtle cues such as the behavior of NPCs or the layout of the environment. If your players are watching a temple guard go on his rounds and he always makes a point to hop over a certain stone, that's a great clue that that stone might trigger a trap. By giving your players clues, you'll help them understand what they need to do to overcome the traps, which makes it really satisfying when they can put that knowledge into action. It's important to remember that not all traps need to be overcome. Failure can be a part of the story. As long as the trap doesn't kill everybody in the party, then the game and the narrative continues on with the failure to overcome the trap as part of the emergent story. By finding the right balance between challenge and frustration, you'll create traps that won't make players run away from the table in frustration. And that's always a good thing. You want your traps to be a lot of things: challenging, unexpected, and fun. One of the things that you don't want them to be is monotonous. When you reveal a trap, players should be excited or scared. They shouldn't roll their eyes and go, "Oh God, another pit trap?" You've got to mix things up and keep things interesting and keep the players engaged. So here are some ways to mix up your traps. Offer a variety of traps, from physical obstacles to puzzles to combat challenges. This will keep your players on their toes and prevent them from becoming too comfortable or complacent. Surprise your players with unexpected twists and turns. For example, a trap that was meant to slow them down could end up helping them in some way, or a valuable item that was supposed to be behind a trap could actually be the trap itself. Require your players to interact with their environment and think creatively when it comes to overcoming traps. For example, they might have to use their wits to figure out how to disarm a trap, and then use their skills to bypass a physical obstacle in order to actually do the disarming. Making traps that require multiple steps to overcome can get players invested in what they're doing and how the trap works. By mixing up your traps, you'll keep your players entertained and on their toes. They'll never know what to expect next. Traps can do more than just test your players' abilities or slow them down in their quest. They can also be used to advance the story. Here's how. Traps can be used to protect valuable items or information, such as hidden rooms, treasure, or important documents. By uncovering these secrets, your players can gain valuable information and new insights into the world of your game. Traps can also be used to create twists and turns in your game. For example, a trap could reveal a hidden passage that leads players to a new location, or it could trigger a chain of events that completely changes the course of the story. Maybe somebody that the players thought was big and tough gets caught in a trap and they desperately need the players' help. You can also use traps to flesh out the motivations and the backgrounds of your NPCs. For example, you might have an NPC who has set a trap to protect their home, or you might have a trap that was set by a rival group of adventurers. These kinds of traps can give your players a deeper understanding of the world and the characters in it. By using traps to advance your story, you'll keep your players engaged and invested in that story, and the traps won't seem like just another obstacle that they have to get through to get to the next location. Traps can be a great opportunity to bring your players together and encourage collaboration. Here are some ways to make them more collaborative. Puzzles are part and parcel with the tabletop gaming experience, and they make great traps. Requiring multiple players to solve a puzzle that will kill them if they get it wrong makes for a fun and perhaps tense collaborative experience. For example, the party has to split in two, with one half of the party moving to operate levers in a certain order while the other half defends against incoming hazards and threats. If they get the order wrong, well, more bad stuff gets thrown at them. This is a lot more involved than just having a rogue make a dex check, but it's also a lot more fun. Create traps that require different skills to disarm or overcome. A trap that requires players to use a variety of skills will be a lot more engaging and rewarding. For example, the rogue may have to roll a dex check to disarm a trap mechanism, while the wizard rolls for arcana to disarm the glyph that will blow the rogue's head off if they fail. Allow players to experiment and try different approaches to disarming the trap, assuming this isn't a save or die situation. Encourage them to share their ideas and don't try to restrict them to a one true solution that you have in mind. If they come up with something that's plausible, let that be the solution to the trap rather than letting them spin their wheels until they get your absolute right answer. By making your traps a collaborative experience, you'll encourage stronger bonds amongst your players, or at least their characters. It's important not to overuse traps. If every room in your dungeon has a trap, then they'll get repetitive and your players will get bored, and then they'll become desensitized to the very idea of a trap. Traps will lose their impact within your game. So, use them sparingly and strategically, and they could become a core part of your group's gaming experience.